Pharmaceutical Sciences interview with Professor Fiona Thistlewaite. We're here with Zara Rattray from the University of Strathclyde, myself from GlaxoSmithKline, and of course, Professor Thistlewaite from Manchester. We'll start with a few introductions. I'll pass over to Zara very briefly, then myself, and I'll finally introduce Fiona before we start the interview.
Good day, everyone. My name is Zara Rattray, and I am a Chancellor's Research Fellow and Lecturer at the University of Strathclyde, and I'm also co-convener for the Academy of Pharmaceutical Sciences Advanced Therapy Medicinal Products Focus Group. I'm really excited and interested about this interview today, and I look forward to hearing more about what Fiona has been up to. I'll hand over back to you, Chris.
Thank you. I'm Chris van der Wall. I'm here at GlaxoSmithKline in Stevenage in the Cell and Gene Therapy team. I'm head of the formulation group, and the team here really are trying to develop at least one more medicine to achieve treatments of solid tumours, lete-cel as it's called. We hope to progress the BLA to 2023. And for the purpose of the interview, I think it's important to understand the interface between industry and the clinic. So I'm very excited to hear what Fiona has to say over this interview. So please, Fiona, if you want to introduce yourself, and then I'll maybe talk through your bio.
Yeah, thanks very much, Chris and Zara. So I'm Fiona Thistlewaite. I'm a medical oncologist at the Christie in Manchester, and I have a long-standing interest in early phase trials, particularly of cell therapy in the solid tumour cancer setting, and I head up a consortium that's called IMATCH, which I think we'll talk about a bit more today.
Marvellous. Thanks very much, Fiona. Let me read out your bio. And then if I start off maybe with one question, we'll exchange with Zara, and hopefully we'll get to the end of the 6 questions we have outlined for today. Thank you very much. So Professor Thistlewaite's bio: Fiona is a medical oncology consultant, as we just heard, with the Experimental Cancer Medicines team at the Christie NHS Foundation Trust, and an honorary professor of experimental immunotherapy at the University of Manchester. She's been actively involved in clinical trial development for many years, with an early focus on early phase clinical trials in immune oncology, particularly adoptive cell therapies, combination immunotherapies, and immune biomarkers. She's clinical lead for the Advanced Immune and Cell Therapy team at the Christie, director of IMATCH, as we just heard, and IMATCH stands for Innovate Manchester Advanced Therapy Centre Hub, which is one of 3 Innovate UK funded ATTC networks, and ATT stands for Advanced Therapy Treatment Centres. Apologies for all the acronyms so early on. So Fiona is also the medical director of the NIHR Christie Clinical Research Facility and co-chairs the Manchester Immuno-Oncology Network, which connects scientists and clinicians across what is a very much exciting and dynamic field of medicine. So it's an awful lot, I think, you do there, Fiona.
Yeah, I will do that.
But really pleased to take you on board for this interview. Let me start with question 1. It's very simple, really. So could you tell us a little bit about the role of the ATTC network and its benefit to patients?
Yeah. So the ATTC network is about scaling up activity in cell and gene therapy. So we're seeing, it's really exciting times. We're seeing innovative new products coming through into the clinic and actually moving beyond those very early research areas into standard of care practice. And we've seen that, I guess, lead towards my field of oncology, particularly in the hematological setting with CAR-Ts. And these are now part of our standard of care. And as we get more and more products coming through the NHS, it's really important that the NHS is equipped to be able to deliver these at scale. And actually, they're such complex therapies that the only way we can really do that is by collaboration in a kind of wider way than perhaps we're used to. You know, we're used to collaborating on science projects or maybe within a clinical trial. But actually, what we need to be doing is taking it from the lab through into clinical practice and collaborating with commercial partners across different commercial partners, I think in a way that we've not seen before, if we're going to achieve that idea that the UK can be a beacon of activity and can deliver these as standard of care treatments ultimately.
I very much like your comment that the UK can be a beacon of activity in this area. Of course, I absolutely agree with that, and I hope many of our listeners do as well. How many years has ATT actually been active for now, do you know?
Yeah, so the ATTC came together as a way of delivering that kind of beacon of activity. So the network was established in 2018 with funding from Innovate UK. And essentially, 3 centres were funded. IMACH, Innovate Manchester Advanced Therapy Centre, being one of the 3, with the other 2 being Northern Alliance and the Midland and Wales ATTC. So actually, although IMACH is very Manchester-based, the others are actually spread out. Northern Alliances across Scotland and Northern England, Midlands and Wales, as it suggests, across the Midlands, and actually has expanded across the larger swathe of England and into Wales. And we're coordinated by the Cell and Gene Therapy Catapult and have strong links to the London network as well, which is funded slightly differently, but we collaborate as well with them. So it gives that national picture for collaboration and collaborating closely with industry partners as well.
Absolutely. It's good to see a national picture as you described there. Very impressive. Thank you. I'll stop there for a minute because I'm going to hog the questions otherwise. Zara, if I pass over to you.
Thank you very much for the great introduction, Fiona. So we've mentioned that we've got a burgeoning cell and gene therapy industry in the UK. So the next question I'm going to ask relates a little bit more to IMACH. So how do you see IMACH evolving over the next 5 years to kind of cater for such growth in this space?
Yeah, I think there's several things we need to do. So we need to continue our work programme, which we have currently 8 different work packages, which are delivering a really wide variety of things, from introducing things like wearable technology that allows, hopefully in the future, patients on these complex therapies to be more at home rather than in the hospital, so remote monitoring type ideas, right through to things like health economics and patient-reported outcomes and how we can determine funding in the future as part of standard of care for these and reimbursement for these really expensive therapies. So we have a really strong work programme going on, and we're already thinking about what we might do within phase 2. So our current funding programme is complete during 2022, and we're looking for follow-on funding from that. So that's kind of the first step. The second thing to say is that increasing, although we were set up with each ATTC having individual programmes, what was clear right from the beginning was that there's a lot of collaborative opportunities, so some overlap, but also some very individual aspects to each of the programmes. And so where we've been able to collaborate, we have, because what we don't want to do is duplicate. And increasingly what we've seen is network-wide projects developing. So I lead a network-wide project called Sample, which is looking at standardisation of various aspects of cell and gene therapy, such as sample collection or how we carry out apheresis. You know, it's fine if we have 2 standard of care products for cell therapy where we need to apherese patients if those are slightly different protocols. But actually, in the future, if we have 5 or 10 products, we need an element of standardisation where we can. There's always going to be differences, but if we have agreed standard practices, we can build upon those. So those are really important. And then the final piece of the jigsaw that I'd say is really crucial over the next 5 years is that collaboration with industry. And we've got a really strong industrial advisory group within the ATTC network. There's, I think, around 60 different industrial collaborators, ranging from big pharma like GSK, right down to very small biotechs looking at things like digital services, for example. So across a whole range. And again, that's, I think, where we can build strength and collaboration and develop our work programmes as we go forward, to ask those questions: where really is the unmet need and how can we deliver these together? So those are the key factors, I think.
That's a great response, Fiona, and I totally agree. It's never been so important to actually have clinicians, the industry and R&D work together so closely, and this is a great opportunity and indeed probably quite exciting, and it'll really map the future of drug development to some extent. I'll hand back over to Chris, who I'm sure has more questions for you today.
I mean, just to say, I have, over the last, I guess we're coming up to 3.5, 4 years, I've learned a whole new language around that kind of idea of collaborating with commercial partners and how we take that forward. So it's not just about setting up a project, it's about how do we commercialise that and actually become kind of internationally leading. Now, my area is in that early phase trial setting, so some of these concepts have been quite foreign to me. But I think in a field like this, you have to be able to span all of those in order to demonstrate that we have capabilities here in the UK across all of that piece.
Yeah, I do like that concept, Fiona, that you're repeating here, the idea of learning through collaboration to standardise processes across early to late phase that will ultimately impact the cost of goods. And
yeah,
let me just use that as a segue actually to this question here, because I noticed that this summer, I believe, there's been a new e-learning programme targeting healthcare and academic professionals. Could you tell us a little bit about the programme, why it's important and timely, and maybe how flexible the programme is? Because the more people that become familiar, of course, with the area you've just been describing, the more collaboration, the more learning and so on, I think we get critical mass in the UK.
Yeah, I think education and training is key here. We have to be able to educate at so many different levels of complex therapies like this. From, you know, the porter who will deliver the cells to the hospital and need to know that you can't just leave them on the reception desk, right the way through to training the next generation of experts in the field. You know, if we are going to be that beacon of activity and have manufacturing facilities and developers of advanced therapies, we need to be able to develop the staff and the infrastructure to be able to do that, as well as within the clinical setting. And the e-learning for health modules are available through the ATTC website, are actually a crucial stepping stone to that. So the idea is these are standalone modules. They're not just a video for someone to watch, they're actually really interactive. And they're designed for different kind of components. So they're modular, people can look at whatever is relevant to them. So for example, there's one about liquid nitrogen storage and how we manage the products within a hospital, but right through to some of the really cutting edge cell and gene therapy and latest advances in things like gene modified cell therapy. And so I think, you know, I really encourage people to look at those, and they're standalone, so people can dip in and out of what they want. They can use them for CPD points, but also hopefully be of value. Now, the modules that are there at the moment are what we think of as the first wave of those, and we've got future waves to come. So, you know, we're always interested to hear where people feel that there's an unmet need, that we can develop something. One area that we're interested in is things like, as more patients come through having had cell therapy, many of those patients will come to a specialist centre to receive the cells. But the hope is that they'll then enter a programme of hopefully long-term follow-up having received them. And, you know, our ambition is that can be done in a more local environment to where the patient lives. That will help access for all patients with a particular disease type. And what that means is a level of understanding at local district hospitals or with the GP or with the admission services if someone becomes acutely unwell, so that people have some understanding of that. And so it's about pitching it at the right level, and I think that's where the e-learning for health modules are really helpful.
Yeah, it's very interesting that it targets professionals from healthcare and academia. The way you describe that is absolutely pertinent. The Academy of Pharmaceutical Sciences, I hope, can somehow disseminate that as well a bit further to our members. That's something, a goal we should look at, Zara, I hope, in the future.
Definitely, and that's something we're striving to do within the focus group, as well as the healthcare professionals, to educate the pharmaceutical scientists about some of the existing challenges and opportunities within the sector. So I think it's a very exciting time in terms of bringing these different elements together. So actually, I've got one follow-up question. So you've mentioned something about the patient side and the patient perspective. And what I was thinking about was, what do you see the next disruptive technology in the field being? I know it's a very broad question. What excites you the most about? I mean,
there's so much exciting as we're seeing these go from first into early phase trials and actually developing through into later phase trials, and now coming through across a range of different cell and gene therapies. I work in the solid tumour area, and as Chris has mentioned already, for the first time, I think now what we're seeing is the efficacy signals that we've searched for quite a long time in the solid tumour setting. And there's an area, I mean, I'm completely biased, so that's fine because it's my area of interest. But actually, I think what we'll see for the first time is some of these applications for license for some of these products and actually coming into the standard of care setting. It might be to begin with in very rare indications like rare types of sarcoma, for example. But I think that's a challenge, but also really exciting for the field, was to start to think, how will we deliver that? I think with the hematological CAR T setting, there's an infrastructure already in place there in terms of the bone marrow transplant services that are set up. But what do we do with the solid tumours? Do they form part of do we integrate those into the standard oncology setting? Do they stay or move into part of the transplant setting? But again, that's okay if we have one rare disease indication and one licensed product. What happens when we have 10 for beyond oncology setting for some of the CAR T, TCR gene modified, perhaps into rheumatological diseases where there's a lot of interest? So I think that's a challenge, but also, I mean, it'd be so exciting to see that coming through into standard of care practices.
That's great. Thank you very much, Fiona. Chris, do you have anything else you would like to ask?
Yeah, I would like to just build on the answer there for Fiona. I think it's always really exciting to hear her distinguish between the hematological cancers and the solid tumours. There's one question. You're obviously a clinician. You have an awful lot of interaction with patients in a very delicate scenario. How do you manage the expectations of patients prescribed cell therapy medicines, given that the efficacy can be high, but patient numbers in clinical trials is somewhat lower than the standard medicine?
Yeah, it's a good question. And so for the patients I see in our clinic, they're all coming through having been referred for trials, and they'll often have Googled a bit and have some knowledge of cell therapy before they actually come and see us. And of course, in the press in general, these are often, CAR T are often discussed in a very positive way, and in some ways quite rightly, you know, in a hematological setting, it's a chance at a cure for patients who would have had a very dismal prognosis. But actually, you know, in the solid tumour setting, they're coming into relatively early phase trials still, and it's really important that we try and temper that high expectation and that we educate the patients around likely toxicities and inpatient stays. And actually, one of the biggest challenges is that when we see a patient in clinic, the chance of them actually getting onto that trial is fairly small. So they come anticipating that they're going to have this cell therapy, and actually every step of the way they may be deemed not eligible, and that might be they don't have the right HLA group, they don't express the right antigen, that their apheresis doesn't work, that the manufacturer unfortunately fails, or that the patient actually deteriorates within those kind of 6 to 8 weeks time between having consenting for the trial and receiving cells. So I don't think we've got it right yet, but it is a really challenging thing within a clinic. You don't want to take hope away from patients who come expecting this brand new treatment, but equally, you know, it's really important that we try and temper their optimism right from the beginning.
Yeah, it's a very strong motivating message you send there, Fiona. I really appreciate that. And of course, we are putting our patients first in all that we do, whether it's in academia, industry, or of course in the clinic. And thank you very much. Very interesting to hear what you say.
Thank you, no problem.
Yeah, and thank you very much for a very insightful interview. We would like to thank you for the insights you've provided today and the very interesting discussion that we've had. And I hope that our viewers enjoy it just as much as we have.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Fiona.